Protesters in the Bangladesh capital Dhaka stormed the offices of two leading newspapers overnight. The violence was triggered by the death of a student activist who was shot last week. Authorities say the suspected gunman has probably fled to India. There are now fears that this unrest could feed even more running up to national elections next February.
Fresh fury on the streets of Dhaka, as well as university campuses across Bangladesh. Thousands have taken to the streets, blocking roads and clashing with security forces following the news of Hadi's passing.
We just want justice.
Sharif Osman Hadi was shot in the head by masked assailants last week. He was on life support in Singapore for 6 days, but died of his injuries on Thursday. Hadi was a prominent student leader and a key figure in the 2024 pro-democracy uprising that shook Bangladesh and ultimately drove long-term Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina from power. He was running in next year's general election for a seat in parliament.
Hadi was one of the key figures in upholding the July uprising. Regardless of political affiliation, he always called on us to unite. He consistently raised awareness against fascism and Indian imperialism. And he led his movement single-handedly. His death will remain a milestone for us.
The demonstrations on Thursday night took a turn when mobs torched the offices of two leading newspapers. Trapped staff had to be rescued by authorities. Hadi was an outspoken critic of India, and protesters accused the papers of serving Indian interests in the Muslim-majority country. Some protesters felt this sent the wrong message.
If the media makes mistakes, these should be open to criticism. But burning down an office is never acceptable. Media offices contain vital documents and important data. There's no justification for this. Such behaviour leads to fascist thinking, where mobs take the law into their own hands instead of seeking accountability through democratic means.
The unrest highlights deep political tensions ahead of the upcoming elections in February. Authorities have called for calm and pledged investigations into Hadi's killing. On the streets, however, many say Hadi's death has intensified demands for change.
And for more, I'm joined now by Sara Hossain. She is a lawyer with a focus on human rights at Bangladesh's Supreme Court. She joins us now from Dhaka. Sara, it's good to have you with us. I'd like to start with Sharif Osman Hadi. What did he stand for, and why was he especially popular among young people?
I mean, he was one of the leaders of last year's protest, the July uprising, which led to the fall of the previous government led by Sheikh Hasina. He was a very outspoken young person. He spoke his mind. He was the leader of a cultural organization called Inkilab Moncho. He was, I think, very deeply rooted also in poetry, in culture. He recited strongly and powerfully, and he really struck a chord with many of the young people who've been part of the change that we've seen during this year. He was also actually extremely strong in his views around criticism of India and of Indian hegemony in our region, and particularly in relation to Bangladesh. That also, I think, struck a chord with many people because of the kind of historical relationships and political relationships that we've had.
Yeah, I want to pick up on that. There are reports that the suspect may have already fled to India. If you could explain to our viewers the Indian connection to this shooting.
I don't know that there's an Indian connection to the shooting, but I think the issue is that the killers, the people who are suspected of having killed Hadi, are suspected to have fled to India. And as far as we know, if that is the case, we're not aware of any cooperation or assistance that's being provided from India in this connection. And of course, the backdrop to this is that during the horrific atrocities that happened under the previous government during the July uprising last year, where over 800 people were killed, young people were killed in a period of over 2.5 weeks, many of those directly involved in ordering and directing those attacks have also, in the meantime, sought shelter in India. And despite repeated representations by the Bangladesh authorities, there is little cooperation and indeed a great deal of denial by not only Indian authorities, but by senior Indian and former bureaucrats and important figures within India, denying the role that is being played in terms of harboring these people and failing to coordinate with the Bangladesh government and with the Bangladesh people in seeking justice. And I think that is also that is fomenting further distrust, hostility.
We've got about a minute left. I want to ask you about what we heard from Bangladesh's interim leader, Mohammed Yunus. He's urging citizens to remain calm so that violence will not undermine the credibility of the national election scheduled for next February. Is this situation that volatile? I mean, it appears that the situation is volatile enough that it could be a threat to democracy 2 months from now. Is it?
Yeah, the situation is very volatile and the interim government needs to step up. What we saw last night was horrific. Two of our leading newspapers, the leading newspapers in the country, which played an enormously powerful and strong role in exposing human rights violations and corruption under the previous regime, have been torched overnight. The interim government failed to provide the protection that was necessary, failed to provide it in time to stop this happening. There were journalists in fear of their lives last night, and this group that attacked the newspapers had no excuse for doing that. Some people have deliberately whipped up anger and sentiment against them and are using Hadi's killing to try and pursue their own political agenda, a very exclusionary political agenda, one that is trying to destabilize the country for their own political gain. There is absolutely no question other than we need to stand with the newspapers, stand with the media, stand with cultural organizations, and stand for a Bangladesh which is an inclusive, democratic Bangladesh which is about protecting the right to equality, not using Hadi's killing to further division and entrench distrust and discrimination inside the country.
Sara Hossain, an advocate with the Bangladesh Supreme Court. Sara, we appreciate your time and your valuable insights into this story. Very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.